So I thought I would start off by asking both of you how you got involved in the project, and also specifically, what was your emotional or intellectual relationship with J.R.R. Tolkien?
It was a couple of years back. I mean, the journey is quite long. So when around 12, 13, I started reading his books, and this was the time when I was very miserable. I was quite alone, and I was at that time growing without a father, and I was being bullied. I was feeling like an outsider. We had moved, and then the first book, I think a teacher gave it to me and said, "I think you're gonna like this," and and that became an escape. And those stories kind of became those friends that I was seeking at that time. And then fast forward 30 years later, I get sent a script. I mean, at that time the script was quite different what you see now, but it's a story of friendship about a young boy around age 12 being an outsider, growing without a father, and there's a certain odd destiny that at the time when I fell in love with his stories, this film or this story is depicted in that era, and that's how there's this odd friendship with him that I feel, and that's why I then involved, and then we started writing and shaping and making the film.
For me, it's just being in the arms of a storyteller. I mean, J.R.R. Tolkien was just immensely readable. I've always loved children's literature. I mean, not that this is children's literature, but and also the notion of illustrations and obviously for me how music joins with image. So it was just kind of wow. On the one hand, on the other, I met Dome and so enjoyed his work and I've so much enjoyed our collaboration.
What changed, if anything, for how you saw Tolkien through the process of making this film?
I mean, well, the image, overall image. I mean, I was growing in Finland, so actually have an American father who was a member of the Mampas, and when I was a kid, when I got to know him as a teenager, I actually used to attend these screenings in New York where he lived, and he was very sick at his old age, so he took very much pride at still with walking with a cane to the screening. So actually, I'm very honored to be here. It feels actually quite great. But so I was growing in Finland, and at that time, the only thing you get is the kind of the book when a book is published, or a local newspaper will tell the story about C.S. Lewis in Oxford and him smoking a pipe and debating with about elves or Christianity. And that's the story you get. And then you delve into this history, and no, that's an orphan. It's a poor kid. It's not a privileged Oxford man. There's actually a darkness. He's actually gone through a certain darkness. It's a story from darkness to light. And when you look at his illustrations that I studied a lot, I went to art school. When you look at the illustrations, they are quite dark, and they're kind of the lines, they have a temper. So you can feel that he's processing with his early age illustrations, is processing the pain that that we see here. And I think that was something, the revelation. You feel that okay, he was always a joyful fellow, because you see the interviews in the 60s done by BBC, but that's coming from a wisdom that's seen all this. So that was kind of the revelation for me about his story.
So I had read that you worked together on the music for a year before, and before you even saw a first cut of the film, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd seen fragments. We got together and started thinking, and it was a wonderful way to present ideas without that horrible kind of looming Friday afternoon where things had to be done or whatever. So we got to know each other, I think, really well, and that was a wonderful thing.
There's a wonderful anecdote. So basically, as you saw, the shoot was hell. It was heavy. It was basically, I totally burnt out, and I told my editor I don't want to see any material in like a month. I need to recover. So we rented a house here with my wife. Then I emailed Tom saying, hey, I might come over to a cup of coffee. This tells a lot about the man, say hi. And he said, oh, great, do you have any material? Let's start working. And I'm the editor, like, Tom would love to work and see something. So So I had to go to the edit and patch a couple scenes together just to show like the style and the feel. And then ended up actually working in his studio for 4 days. And that's how I fell in love with this man, because the passion. Like, when can I start? Even though it was 3 months before we finished the cut.
Well, it's just fun to do that. I mean, maybe the best part of all this for me is just what you get to share with someone moment to moment and day to day, and you learn about taste, you learn about you know, if ideas that we have were going to stick, you know, and someone said, you know, we're always ready to make a movie once we're all done because now we trust each other in earnest. But I think Dome and I trusted each other along the way, probably because we had a bit more time.
I noticed in the film there's really kind of like three visual styles through the film. I was wondering, could you describe those and maybe talk to us about your thinking behind that?
Well, the key was his illustrations. So, as pointed out, I analyzed a lot. The first thing, when you read about I of course read everything about him and listened to every interview, met a humongous amount of Tolkien experts. And the difficulty with Tolkien experts is that one person will say this and the other person will contradict it. Because, of course, there's always a filter. That's their personality that filters or analyzes it. So everyone thinks that they are the right approach. So as an artist, when you're making a biopic, you have to find, this is my interpretation. This is the voice I hear through everything. And the key for me was the illustrations, kind of the colors he uses, the color palette, and I said, kind of the depth and the stories he's trying to tell as a very young boy or a young man. And so it felt like, okay, there's darkness, but then there's Edith, which has light. So we talked a lot with our team and cinematographer Lasse Frank, that Edith is kind of the warm light in his darkness, in his early years. So we played a lot like basically the light coming more and more into the story. When he loses the Shire, and of course that's true how he felt, that's the emotion he felt, like he left from the Shire, from English countryside into Birmingham, which is called Black England, I believe is the phrase. That was a feeling, kind of entering this kind of darker place. So if you look at the wallpapers at Mrs. Faulkner, they are darker. So everything there in the colors palette is a bit dark. And slowly, Edith kind of brings that light into it. And then, of course, War, where this is Grant Montgomery is fantastic, our production designer, because the World War I buff. And he noted one interesting thing. The World War I camera equipment couldn't handle rain. Plus, they're always black and white. So we don't see what it actually looks like at Somme, which is next to a river, what the chemicals when they are going in the air, or the chemicals when the water, oxide will make the water red. The mist will be different colors. It's almost like you're in the 70s, like, just these colors of seeing. And so we use that as an element of kind of visualizing his image of, it's not his Mordor, but it's kind of a first step or first idea of this ruthless world, colorful world. So kind of there were different elements that I took from his illustrations or from his true like feelings, how he felt.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here, and thank you all for coming.